They're inherently good. They think that they're going, they ultimately think it's going to be okay. Every captive elephant should smash every single person they ever come in contact with, right? For what we've taken from
Yes.
them, what we've done to them. If they should, they should. But they're inherently good.
Yes.
They are so good that they put up with all this bullshit that we do to them. They're so good. And then they snap finally, you know. But they're so good. And it's to their detriment. To their detriment.
Welcome to Bearing Weight, a space for the stories elephants can't tell, shared by the people who know them best. Hosted by the Weeping Elephant Project. Hello and welcome. Today we're joined by Steve Koyle, founder of Elephant Care Unchained, a nonprofit that works globally to improve elephant welfare by training handlers and supporting the transition to humane care practices. Steve's decades of hands-on care and global work give him a unique perspective on elephant well-being. Steve, thanks so much for being here. We like to start every episode by asking, what is your elephant origin story?
Oh, my journey began with elephants in the beginning of 2002, where I took a job at the Phoenix Zoo. And there they had 3 elephants. Prior to that, I earned a degree in zoology from Michigan State University. Always had a love for animals. Chose the path. I was training dogs in California prior to my taking the job at the zoo, and then prior to that, I was working at a exotic animal sanctuary in California, where I took care of some chimpanzees and lions and tigers and pretty much everything. And then my passion for animals led me to apply for a zoo job. And you never really, at least for me, you're kind of like never really wanted to work in a zoo in a sense, but I loved animals and wanted to care for animals, and accepted the job as an elephant keeper at the zoo in the beginning of 2002, and the story begins with elephants.
Steve, what prompted you to apply to zoos?
Animals, animals. It was all about animals, and it wasn't like I said in '02. And now is like a different world, right? And you guys will figure out my take on zoos is very, very different than what you're gonna expect to hear. Um, it was animals. I wanted to work with animals. And as a kid, and I wasn't a vet, I wasn't a smart guy. I did get a degree in zoology, but that's only because of the curve. Um, so what was left for me? I wanted to do something with animals. I wasn't sure. I know I didn't really want to work in a zoo, but you know, I'm thankful for that time that I was there because I learned a lot. I met 3 amazing elephants who inspired me to take on this lifelong journey. And then so my journey with the ups and downs of that job, and I'm here today now. So
I think your point of applying to the zoo because of animals is a really good one too, in that even when I was in college, you want to work with animals and you're like, okay, I'll be a zookeeper or I'll be a vet. And that's it. You don't think about all the other jobs that are out there that work with animals. So many times it kind of leads you towards one of maybe a few options. But what was your experience like working at the zoo? Did you enjoy it? How did you transition from that to what you're doing now?
my time at the zoo was was a roller coaster. When I first took the job, my manager at the time was um, an old school guy, shall we say. And, he had said some things um, about working with the elephants that didn't really make sense. Like, you don't ask them, you tell them, and da da da, da da da, da da da. And so that whole mindset was, I was like, if I wouldn't want this elephant to come over to me, why would I be so, angry or aggressive toward the animal? So it never really made sense to me. And then a year into my elephant career, um, my mentor came at the time. The zoo hired a consultant, and he came and kind of uh, validated all of my feelings. So I wasn't like alone. So he kind of he validated all of my thoughts and opinions. And I didn't know anything. I thought if this is what an elephant keeper is all about, then I don't want to be an elephant keeper, to be honest. And
Yeah.
so then that was about a year into my career, and I wasn't very happy there. I didn't enjoy the elephants. I didn't like being around the elephants. It wasn't very fun for me. I sure as hell wasn't fun for the elephants. And so about 23 months in, I asked for a job transfer to go part time to the petting zoo to get out of elephants because it was so miserable. Because I was something I was. I was being something I wasn't.
What was so miserable about it? To be specific, what was it that was so miserable?
Well, the elephants' lives weren't great. I was I would say I probably was emotionally abusive to the elephants. Okay, so um, I was told you gotta be like aggressive toward them in a sense. You don't ask them, you tell them what to do, and their lives aren't that bad. We don't ask that much of them, so when we ask that, they gotta do it. And I was like, what? I'm not some monster trying to yell and be aggressive toward these elephants, which is I'm 100% 180 now. When you see any videos with me, it's almost embarrassing how I am with the elephants, and that's probably where it comes from because I'm not. These elephants didn't sign up. They're in prison. They didn't sign up to be in prison. They didn't sign to be. No elephant in captivity signed up to be in captivity. So we have to make it as best as we can for them, right? And so I'm not going to be shitty to them. I'm not going to be some warden at the prison. I'm not going to be some prison guard. You know, and so that just kind of morphed me into who I am today. And so when the zoo made the change, after I had asked for like I said, I asked for a job transfer to go part time to the petting zoo to get out of elephants. And that could have went one or two ways, but then the zoo decided to make a change. And then me and with there, she took over, and then her and I took the program to a whole another level and had workshops, and it became a pretty special place while I was there.
Kinds of changes did you guys put in place to improve the lives of the elephants?
Well, immediately we fought for everything. So we became a tight knit group at the zoo there. So we fought. We never really asked permission to do things for the elephants. We just kind of did things because we all wanted to do things for the elephants, right? Whether it's enrichment, I believe we were the second zoo in the country to put sand inside for elephants. Um,
Huh.
so that was a huge thing, yeah, and we had concrete floors, but we put sand on it. It was very labor intensive, but we knew the benefit for the elephants. And then we started to till the yard, and just, it was we're in the desert there. The ground was so compact, and so I'd go out there with the bobcat backhoe, and I'd take a section of ground every day, and just break up X amount, and we did the whole yard, and we tilled the whole yard. It became like a big soft thing, and we really embraced what we were taught about elephants with our consultant and my mentor. It's built feeders and misters and all kinds of things, and really, and then invited people. So we had workshops there, and so I was very proud of the work we accomplished. But then I always also knew that there's so much more to do. There's so much more that we need to
Yeah.
provide. There's so much more. We had three special elephants to say that they didn't get along, and so we had to rotate them, and so that was a whole nother thing. And that they had stereotypic behaviors. Even though there's food above their head, they're still having these stereotypic behaviors, and constantly trying to do more. What can we do? How can we do? What else can we do? We maximize their space, and after you maximize their space, what else is there, right? And so
Did you observe or sense a change in the elephants as this was happening?
100%. Yeah, 100%. Because before you'd have them do stuff. So we'd make them lay down or we do whatever, and we'd brush them. Basically it's like you wash a car and you put it back in the garage. You wash a car and you put it back in the garage. This is how we treat elephants, right? So we were bathing them and scrubbing them and
Yeah.
telling them to do different things, which we would call exercise or whatever, or trick, whatever you want to say that we would do. And the elephants would like be aggressive, and because we're barking at them, basically we're yelling at them, we're speaking not nice to them, right? And so that
Yeah.
whole thing was like just not a fun thing. And that was me taking care of an elephant, I thought, was to give them a bath. But then you start to think about, so then we stopped putting soap and scrubbing them, and we just kind of hose them off, look at them, and relax, calm, and their whole demeanor changed. And we had three
Wow.
notorious elephants, probably the most notorious elephant at the time at the zoo. And I'm thankful for all of them because they all taught me so much. And we didn't have like cupcake elephants by any stretch, and so you could see them change and them trust and them relax, and that's the key. And that's, like I said, they didn't sign up to be there. And so why we would be shitty to them
Right.
doesn't make any sense.
It must have been just tremendously satisfying to see them register the change and act differently or appear to feel differently, when you did that. It must have been thrilling.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Because every day you earn their trust a little bit more. You get them to relax a little bit more. And these elephants are dealing with so many different demons that they've had. They've had so much. I've had people come down there and tell me stories, and it's heartbreaking. The captive elephant is a tragic story. It really is on every
Yes.
level, right? There's just different levels to it.
Yes.
And so knowing their stories, knowing the shit that happened to them, and the fact that they're able to trust a little bit every day, right? A little bit every day. And so, you,
Right.
it's reassuring them that it's going to be okay. We're trying. Here, play with this toy. Here, do this. Here, go over there. Go do something, please. Just go, just go and make a choice. And so those things are the rewarding thing. And I'm thankful for those elephants, and I'm thankful, like I said, for my time at the zoo to spend time with those elephants. And so it was a very long, and I'm gonna get emotional, but yeah,
How long was it? How long were you there from start to finish?
14 and a half years I was there. Yeah, so I started
Wow.
in the beginning of '02, like I think March something '02. And then I was fired June 2016.
What led to that, if I may ask?
Um, my passion was misinterpreted is kind of a way I like to say it. If I say that we need to do more, we need to be better, elephants need more space, they need more room. This is good, but this isn't good enough. That would be people thinking that I think the zoo is not good enough, the zoo sucks, and da 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 da. Never said that. That if your impression of your impression of what I said, that's on you. Ultimately, I paid the cost, and there's a whole history of me giving tours at the zoo and talking to people, and I became a very, very influential person there. I would think IDA came to my zoo when I was 3 years in, maybe. We had just started this whole transformation, and I gave them a tour behind the scenes. I didn't ask. I just said, "Come on down." I didn't know who they were at the time. The gentleman was telling me that he used to work with my mentor at another zoo, and "Oh, come on down." And I just gave him the whole story, and I said, "Yeah, we're doing this. We don't like this. We want to change this. We want to do this." Da 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 da. And come to find out that they were the three spokespeople for IDA. And they were just at a layover from another zoo, and every year they have the top 10 worst zoos for elephants. So I was at my other job, and my manager calls me at the time, and she says, "Hey, Steve, did you give a tour yesterday?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah." He used to work with, he used to work blah blah blah. He says, "Do you know who they were?" I says, "I had no idea." He says, "Our previous director came down to the barn looking for me." And he says to my boss at the time, he says, "Is Steve here?" She says, "No, he's at his other job." And just so you know, those people were from IDA, and just so you know that they think that you guys are doing something special here, and Steve's pretty special. So the Phoenix Zoo is no longer in the crosshairs from IDA.
It's in defense of animals for people who may not know the initials.
Correct. So I gave them the tour and whatever, and so my director at the time, the first director, he's like, "It's amazing. Thank you." So Phoenix Zoo is no longer in the crosshairs because, of what I had said. My, our program, but how I portrayed the program. Well, I don't want to take credit for it because it was a team effort there of what we were trying
Yeah.
to trying to accomplish. Fast forward 14 years later, these tours have kind of evolved to doing more and more and more. And so that basically same tour gets me fired, in a nutshell from the new director. And so that's kind of, it's admitting that it's not good enough. And that's a hard thing. It's a hard thing for institutions to say, and I'm okay going to sleep at night because I know that I speak on behalf of the elephants. I'll never ever shortchange the elephants. And so I fought for them. And so that my passion was misinterpreted. And one of my coworkers, she says, Steve, but could you ever leave them? Talking about the elephants here. I says, no, I could never leave the elephants at the zoo. Right. And so the zoo, I like to think, did a tremendous favor to elephants around the world by firing me and allowing me to do this, because I always knew I could do more. I always knew, and I believe zoos should do more, right? So I think that, if you're not drinking the Kool-Aid, then you might be a threat, or you might be, um, whatever. And so that's on them ultimately. And so the Elephant Care Unchained part is actually me being unchained from the zoo. So that's where I
Yeah.
am today. That's kind of my zoo story, summed up in 14 years. My zoo story there.
Well, I think it's such a huge shortcoming of zoos to not continue pushing to do better. I mean, for every captive facility, it's the same thing. There's always a next layer of welfare. There's always a next layer of what we can be doing better for the elephants. And any facility that says, well, I think it's good enough. I think that we've gotten it to a point where everything's good enough. Fire anyone who do things otherwise isn't really working for the elephants. They're working for the income of the facility at the end of the day.
Is there anything they did right for the elephants before you started working?
Before I started working at the zoo, you're asking before? When I got there, I was naive, right? Like, I didn't know. Well, I'm sure most elephant people are pretty naive when they step into something. We love our animals or whatever. No, the zoo wasn't doing it. The program itself wasn't doing anything right. That's why we did a whole 180 and we took it from here to there, right? So, it's about the elephants and about let's work. We're doing things for the elephant, not to the elephant, right? And so that's
Yeah.
the key. So that's what we have to start asking ourselves, because elephants are very tolerant of us dumbasses doing stuff to them, but we need to start doing things for them. And we weren't doing anything for the elephant. It was about our convenience. It was about, let's feed them in a little tub. And okay, watch them eat their little pellets for
Right.
like 2 minutes, take the tub away, throw their hay in the corner of a concrete stall, throw their carrots. Sometimes we got creative and hid the carrots under the hay. This is my, and so for 16 to 18 hours a day, that's all they had was a pile of hay in a concrete barn. Eat, that's it. And so we're like, no, this isn't what it is. So you start to think about the elephant. So all of my talks are like, put yourself in the elephant place. If you were an elephant, would you want to be here? And they're all like, no. I said, then what are we doing? Let's be better. Let's make it better. Let's make it so that if you were an elephant, you'd be okay being here. And so that's a
Yeah.
way I put the people who care for the elephants into the elephant's space. So
Good on you. Good on you.
And do you think that most zoos in the US have done better in the last, 2 decades from when you first started working in the zoo and things were pretty bleak? Do you think that with new standards and new levels of care coming into zoos, do you think that across the board, most of the accredited zoos are making progress and are doing a lot better for the elephants? Or do you think it's there's still a lot left to be done?
I mean, absolutely, they're making progress. Sure, I don't think many elephants in the states, at least, are kept on concrete. I would hope that they're not kept on concrete. I mean, I'm sure there's some small little outliers in there. There's a lot of expansion going on, but then even still, that expansion is a couple acres here and there. Space is the ultimate thing. Space is the final frontier, right, for elephants. And so it's really hard when you see
Yeah.
elephants in a big space like here. They have the jungle, and you got to go like 40 minutes on a bike to go find the elephants in the middle of the forest. And even then, they
Right.
keep moving through it. So it's hard to really justify them or see them in a smaller space. You do everything you can for them, but I would think that the majority of people that care for these elephants, would love to have them have huge spaces, and so and
Right.
if they don't,
Absolutely.
then the conversation kind of ends if they're not having that, right? So if they're okay with them just being there, then the conversation might end. But if you're like, yeah, I wish they had this, I remember watching my elephants at the zoo. As they get older, they're a little stiff, their joints are stiff, and so they would walk, and they're stiff, the legs kind of stiff, it's kind of stiff, and then they would kind of loosen up, but then they would be at the end of the exhibit, and so you can imagine that walk continued, right? The muscles, and a
Yes.
lot of elephants I
Yeah.
see in my travels that have big spaces have handicaps, for example, and these handicaps would be debilitating for an animal that can't move as much, can't climb up a hill or down a hill or do whatever. But space is a huge thing, and if we can't provide adequate space, and how big is adequate? Because whoever has a huge space wants more space. So they just
Sure.
require so
Yeah.
much, and space is the ultimate thing that they need.
So, for people who have only seen elephants in a zoo or in a circus performance, in a riding camp in Thailand, any kind of captive environment that is restrictive, what's one essential truth about elephants, whether it be their behavior, their personalities, what they need? Do you wish that those people understood?
I go back to what I said earlier, that if they put themselves in the elephant's space, right? If they're at a ride, if
Yeah.
when you see a captive elephant, people who study wild elephants will tell you a captive elephant is not really an elephant, right? And I don't want to speak on wild
Hmm.
elephants because I don't that's not my specialty. I don't want to speak out of pocket on that, mm, but that's what people will tell you, that it's not an elephant there, right? Like when you see an elephant swaying, elephants don't do that, right? They don't do that. When you see
Right.
them on a chain, pulling on a chain, or whatever any abnormal thing from wild, they don't do that. So that's not really an elephant, and so that's I think is the thing. Even though we love elephants so much, and myself included, it's hard. It's a hard thing.
Yeah, and it reminds me of something I've been thinking about recently, which is people take their kids to zoos and to circus performances in the US because they want them to see animals and learn about animals, and I think a lot of people feel that by seeing animals in captivity, that's where you learn to love them and you develop some kind of compassion or desire to work for them in the future, which could have a long-term benefit because, like, you are now helping elephants all around the world. But in many cases, kids are going to zoos and they're not really learning anything because they're not reading the little informational placard there. They're not staying for the zookeeper who's giving a talk about the elephants. So, in many cases, are people really getting anything out of seeing these elephants that are swaying and have behaviors that are not aligned with wild animals? And what benefit does it serve for us to have these animals in captivity within zoos in the US? Do you think that there is any conservation benefit? Do you think there's any educational benefit?
Uh, Conservation, not really. Like, because if it's like, I think that zoos should do a lot more for conservation. I mean, it's a good term they like to use. But as far as
Right.
my impression is conserving the species as wild as a whole, not just for your personal thing. The zoo's a business, right?
Right.
And then we also need to talk about defining what a zoo is, because a lot of sanctuaries are zoos. How we define what we say a
Yes.
zoo is, right? Because we get talked about zoo bad, 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 but it's not the case. Like I said, for me, it's about what are we doing for the animals where it is. You can put whatever label you want. Just because you call it a sanctuary doesn't mean,
Yeah.
and you know this, Danielle. Just because you call it a sanctuary doesn't make it a sanctuary.
Yeah.
You know, just because if it's a zoo doesn't make it bad, right? So there's different levels to that. And so people who go to a zoo, they go there. If you have your kids, you take your kids. It's what you do. You go to the zoo. Are you there? You're just there to entertain the kids, right? Is there something to somebody being inspired to help elephants or any other animal? Absolutely. I think that's something to that. I'm not gonna say it's not. to
Yeah.
the level that maybe you want to be a zookeeper and and that's what you love and you think that the zoo elephants have amazing lives. I don't. I love elephants, but I don't think they have an amazing life at the zoo or whatever sanctuary or whatever place you want to label it, right? So there's something to that. I'm not going to say there's not. Um, as far as conservation, I don't know. It's more preservation probably. Like you breed and you have elephants. Who's always if you want to make money, have a baby elephant, right? That's what they said. You get a baby elephant and you make a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I think if you're going to do that, you should say whatever money we get, we're going to send X amount to this place or that place. And I know some zoos do that, but I also know the places that they send the money to, and I think if the zoo actually knew the place that they sent the money to, they might not, because they'll send money to certain places that I know of that aren't good. That some zoos and there's a whole network of these places and things like that. The zoos they kind of pick and choose what they want to send money to because it's a business for them, right? But I think that would be more of win-win, a win-win situation for zoos and for their wild counterparts.
Yeah. You made a point there that I want to flag for anyone listening too is that facilities name themselves. So you can
100%.
go to XYZ Elephant Sanctuary in whatever country, and they named themselves an elephant sanctuary. They were not given that
Correct.
name from an accrediting body. Just like in the US, there are plenty of facilities that call themselves something safari or something sanctuary or something rescue. And that doesn't make them actual rescues. That doesn't make them actual sanctuaries. So a lot of additional research has to go into that to make sure that you are identifying a place that is aligned with what a sanctuary actually is, rather than just choosing that as a pretty name because it's good for marketing.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Like I said, it's about what you're doing what you're doing for the elephant, right? Because
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of sanctuaries out there, and I know that there's a lot of zoos that take much better care than the elephants at the sanctuary. So that's really not debatable. So it's just a matter of the labels and that kind of thing. And it's about what you're doing. I don't care what you call yourself. It's what you're doing for the elephants. How are they treated? How are they living? Are they cared for? That kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Steve, when somebody asks you what you do, what's the response to that?
To simplify it, what I do is whatever this is for the elephant, I try to make this
Yes,
better. I try
right,
to make this better. So this could be this huge forest here in Cambodia. It could be at an amazing sanctuary, the few that are out there. It could be at those. You try to make that a little better. It could be a temple in wherever. It could be a horrible camp or a horrible place. I make whatever this is better. It's not my fight
right,
to get the elephants out of temples because again, who am I? It's not. It's who am I to do? That has to come from
right,
within. But what we can do is we can address the immediate situation, the elephant in the room, literally, and make that better. And then you show people, but people don't necessarily understand that maybe that's not good to hit the elephant in the head. And maybe, the concrete's great because I can clean it easily. They don't really understand about the elephant and the needs and the wants and the biological necessity that
sure.
elephants have. And so I try to make whatever this is better is a good way of saying it. However that could be, whether I'm buying Mahout's lunch or paying their phone bill or giving them blankets or whatever, or having a handshake or having some whiskey or or whatever it would be
Right.
to kind of to incorporate myself into their good graces so that they maybe will apply one little thing that I say and then you revisit um and again it's all about my intention. I'm just trying to help. And so I just keep going back to that because that's for me that's as I've evolved myself. um I'm trusting my intention. Yeah.
I'm pretty interested in the trauma that people who do this work experience. I was on your site and I wrote down a quote, which of course I can't find at the moment, but it was about how these aren't the words, but the emotional toll it takes but when you're doing it and you accomplish something, you keep doing it. But that emotional toll and the things that you've seen that, I can only imagine how horrific they were. And how do you do that? How do you,
Hard,
go
hard,
forward? How
hard,
do you do it?
hard. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
well, I'm getting emotional now even thinking about it. Alright, you guys got me on
That
a
was our
bad day,
goal.
apparently I'm gonna
Our
get
goal was
emotional
to
today.
make you emotional.
Yeah, you got me on a bad day. No, there's so much that goes on, and you wonder, why the hell you're doing this, you know? Like, I'm living in a suitcase, I'm doing all this stuff, I don't have I don't have a home of my people give me a place to stay, yes, and I'm incredibly thankful. I'll go stay with my family or my friends, supporters. I have a PO box. I don't have a home address. I'll wake up sometimes not knowing remember what country I'm in or some weird hotel room. Um, and you go there and you see an elephant somewhere, and you can't even imagine of what this elephant's going through, the pain that these animals endure daily, physical, emotional, and then
Yeah,
you can't understand. So you try to help, and they tell you to piss off basically, or say, and they don't know, and so then you hold it together there, but then you go home and you really process it, and then a lot of sleepless nights, and in my mind now I'm thinking about these different elephants, and that currently are there right now, like so many, you know, and so I'm going
yes.
to be
Yeah.
starting a campaign to help the elephants nobody knows about. It's going to be my campaign for 26, and so um, I know Danielle, you've seen a few on the email list, but there's a lot out there,
Yeah.
and that's gonna be my new campaign. And how I deal with it is that I'm able to help, right? And the hardest thing in life is knowing you can help, but not being able to. So that's the
Yes.
hardest thing. And for me, I know I can help any elephant in this world. Whether it's it's at the amazing, Elven Valley Project where I'm right now, I'll enhance their lives, but they have amazing lives, or I try to go to a horrible temple or horrible camp somewhere and do one little thing that will have a dramatic impact on these elephants' lives. I know I can help in some way, and that's all I want to do. My intention is simply to help, right? However I can. And so that keeps me going, I guess, because I have integrity. I know what my intention is. I'm not trying to screw people over. I'm not trying to put anybody in a bad light. I simply want to just come in the back door and help. You know?
And you've had tangible ways in which you've helped. I mean, you've made a difference in a way that you can look at and know that that elephant is, in whatever way, doing better because of the work that you did. And I got to
Yeah.
believe if that were not the case, there's no way you could do this work.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like I know that I'll go to a place and I'll spend however long I spend there. Sometimes I get a day, sometimes I get a couple hours. Um, but I know while I'm there, I'm planting seeds. I'm trying to, show something a little bit differently. And so maybe they'll take one thing back and apply the things that I shared with them. If I stay somewhere for a longer time, then I know the elephants are being treated kindly, at least while I'm there.
Yeah.
They like
Yeah.
to go back. They always go back to what they know with the old school stuff, and who the hell am I in their mind? Who's this white guy from the west? What the hell does he know, right? And so you have to keep trying, you keep going, you keep calling, you keep showing up, you keep showing up. I guess is what it is, right? One way or the other.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely makes an impact. Every small kindness that you can give to an elephant makes an impact. I'd love for you to tell us a story of one of the elephants that has, like, really stayed with you. And I know I've
Is
heard some of your stories, and some of them are really tough, so it doesn't need to be a really sad one if you wanna tell us a happy story, but I wanna hear about a specific elephant whose story you think of a lot.
Let's see a good story. Let's talk about something good. There's temple elephants I've known that have been living in cages, chained on four legs, that I've known. One I worked for many, many years to get her out of the cage. They finally got her out. She passed, but she was free. She didn't die on a chain. She was free. There's another special elephant that I saw, and I visited, and I did my thing, did my report. And I'm not taking credit for these elephants getting out. I was part of it. I didn't, but it's the locals that did the work. But I did my part. There's elephants that I've known that were in terrible places, and now they're free. And now they're living amazing
Yeah.
lives.
So we have a few closing questions for you that are going to be more rapid fire. First one is, if an elephant could speak directly to the world, what do you think they'd say?
Stop. Stop cutting. Stop taking our forests. Stop taking our lives. Stop.
I agree. I think that is what they'd say. My next question is, we want everyone who's listening to feel empowered while they're listening, that they can make a change, that they're not completely helpless. With that in mind, what is something that anyone and everybody can do to help elephants, regardless of what field they work in, where they live? What can anybody do to help elephants?
Wow. What can anybody do to help elephants? Take care of the planet, I guess. Take care of the environment. I would say donate to legitimate places, but
Yeah,
finding a legitimate place to donate to. I happen to know one, at least one. But yeah, I think do your part to make the world a better place. I guess that applies to everything.
yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
My last question is, what have you learned from elephants you otherwise may not have been exposed to in your life that has changed how you think about freedom, empathy, or even humanity?
If humans were better beings, they'd be elephants.
I love that.
I love that.
That's what I've learned.
I
That's a
love it.
that's a good answer.
There you
Quick
go.
That is
too, but that's a
I
very
hey,
good
was
answer.
quick.
I have
That was
I have a
quick.
whole bunch of quotes and
Yeah,
sayings
no,
back here, and I pull them up when I
you,
need
you
them.
could you could just rattle them off. I
There you
mean,
go. I
it's
got a few. Yeah, I got a few.
well said. Well said.
I would love to end with you telling everyone where they can follow along with you, how they can support you, and keep up with what you're doing.
Okay, follow me. Anything Elephant Care Unchained. So YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. I'm kind of I'm on other things, but I really don't post like LinkedIn or X or TikTok. I'm on those things, but I'm really not active on those things. Randomly, if I remember to share a post from Instagram or Facebook or whatever. Yeah, you guys can donate if you like what I say. You can send me any emails or anything like that. It's Steve Koyle at elephantcareunchained.com. Donations are always helpful because I need funding in order to continue this work. Because like I said, none of these places that don't want me, the last thing they're going to do is pay me. So and like I said, I'm starting a campaign
Absolutely.
soon, helping those elephants nobody knows about. And there's lots out there. So I'm going to be the campaign. I'm going to start that. So if you want to donate to that, and like I said, all the funds go to this mission of helping the world's elephants, no matter where they are, whether it be a zoo or a circus or a camp or a sanctuary or in some garage in the back somewhere that nobody knows about.
What you're doing is I was going to say unimaginably difficult, but it's you can imagine in some ways how difficult it is, and you devoted your life to this, and it's um, people should support it. I mean, that's really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, David. And thank you so much, Steve, for coming on. For anyone who does want to support the work that Steve is doing, you can find all of the links to his socials in our show notes, as well as his website, elephantcareunchained.com, where you can donate to his mission. As always, thank you so much for listening to the Bearing Weight podcast. We'll talk to you on the next one.